but all um, so I heard this morning from Deborah, like a half hour ago. I wrote, "Is Rav Yitz teaching this morning?" And she wrote back, "Judith is teaching." And I thought, oh, she's coming on now. And so I just thought that must have been like an autocorrect of like Yitz to Judith or something like that. Because I didn't even know you were part of the like whatever it is. So I was like, great, then
No,
I'm
I'm
going to
just, I'm just subbing for
which I
Susan
did.
for today.
And then 2 minutes ago, I saw that actually I am teaching, but I prepared a bit on Shabbos, so hopefully it will be enough.
Okay, good. Where did we finish yesterday, guys? I remember.
I can't
I'm not
come
sure I
on
remember exactly. Hello, anybody there?
I wasn't at the shiur, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I'm not ever able to come on Shabbos, so I don't know.
Right.
Hold
I
on a
know.
second.
Somebody was there though.
Need my glasses.
Where did we finish?
Da. I think 10.
I would guess. I mean, there's a set of 2 dots, 2 lines from the bottom of Gimel Amud Bet. I would guess to maybe.
No, we
start
went
from there.
a little
you
bit
went past
longer.
that?
We went a little bit farther, but you could start wherever you want.
All right, so I think I'll start with Haitag Voat Mesrim Ama. I don't know if we did that. Maybe we did that, maybe not. Okay, if the sukkah is 20 amas and senior din betoch esrim ama, insilata miruba mechamatak shira v'im lav psula. So if you have some of the branches hanging down, even though the sukkah is too high, and you have enough sail, then it would be kosher, and if not, not. And then we do the opposite with the small sukkah. Hayta gavoa asara tvachim chutzin yordin letoch asara. Savar Abaye lemeimar im chamatan merubah mitzilatan kshira. So Abaye thought that if we say, well, you have the opposite case where the chutzim are hanging down, but they don't create more shade than light, then we consider the schach on top of that short sukkah, the low sukkah, kosher. But Amar le Rava, Hadira Sruchahi, ve'en Adam Dar Bedira Srucha. But that's an odious sukkah, and we don't count it, so that therefore it wouldn't be in any case, nobody's going to live in such a place. Haitagvo Esrim Mama Ubanaba Itztaba Keneged Dofen HaEmsa'i Al Pnei Chula V'yesh Ba Hechsher Sukkah Kshera. Now we build a platform that's this kosher size of the sukkah itself inside the sukkah, and it's touching 3 walls. Then we say that the sukkah is kosher. We say that, okay, there's a machloket. If we say the platform itself is kosher because it's raised the floor of the sukkah, or actually there's some say that the whole sukkah is even kosher. But if you put this platform, misvat, it's the balakotel arba amot psula, pachot mi arba amot kshera. If you put the platform only against 2 walls, it depends how much area is between the edge of the platform and the 3rd wall. If less than arba amot, we say it's kosher. My kamash malan. What is this teaching? I'm reading Dofen Akuma. Does this mean that we have this principle of Dofen Akuma, which means we do the wall bending over, therefore the 3rd wall bends over, connects to the top of the platform, and we say it's a kosher sukkah? That's the question. Tanina, suppose you have a house and the part of the roof caved in, and you want to use it as your sukkah, and you put the schach on top. If there's more than 4 amot between that area and the walls of the house, and it's not a kosher sukkah, hapachot mikan kshera. But otherwise, it's less space. It would be kosher. Mahu detema, I might think hatamhu dechazia dofen, avahacha delo chazia dofen emala kamash malan. We might say, well, this isn't really there's not really a wall there connecting it, so we can't really consider that a kosher sukkah. This is just a double check I got that right. The edge of the platform until the wall. Okay, but we do say that it's the same other case and it would be kosher. If you have a less of the space, we do see dofen akuma, the bent wall idea. Now, and now we have another case. You build this platform in the middle, and it's not touching any walls. The same kind of case, how far it is from the walls. If it's less amot, it would be kosher. My kamash malan, what's this teaching us? The amrina akuma. We do use this case of the principle of dofen akuma, but I might have thought dofen akuma meruach achad amrinan avakol ruach v'ruach lo kamash malan. You can't use it on all four sides. You can only use it from one side. This principle to make the sukkah kosher, but it teaches us no. You can use all four sides. Use that principle. Now we have the opposite case. You have a low sukkah, and you dig out b'chakak kedei lahashlima im yesh misvat chakak lakotel shlosha tvachim psula v'chot tvachim shira. If you dig out the pit so that you have your 10 from the bottom of the pit to the schach, if it's more than 3 tvachim from the edge of the pit until the walls of the sukkah, it's not kosher. But I mean, if there's less, it's kosher. But if there's more, it's not kosher. My shna hatam damran pachot me'arba amot, u'may shna hacha amrat pachot mishlosha tvachim. Why do we have these two different measurements that we're using for the different cases? Hatam de'ite ledofen pachot me'arba amot sagya hacha leshavye ledofen pachot mishlosha tvachim in im lo. Which means, okay, so I have a little difficulty here trying to distinguish between when we say that dofen akuma is that we're bending the wall itself and when we're making that into ki'ilu schach itself. Let's see, what is it? How do they explain it here? Where am I? Okay. So, or we did that part of the tvachim, yeah. All right. So the art scroll explains the difference between the previous ruling where you say the sukkah is valid as long as there's less than 4 amot, and here where you say you need less than 3 tvachim. There we have a legal wall. We have a real wall, even though it's too high. So it's okay to use 4 amot as the measurement. But here we have to first create a legal wall, where the walls of the sukkah are less than 10 tvachim tall. And thus, if the wall is less than 3 tvachim from the pit, the sukkah is valid. But if they're not less than 3 tvachim, it's not valid. And now we bring in this principle to make it kosher for the pit. If it's less than 3 tvachim, we use the principle of lavud, which means that we see things within a 3 tvachim. We had this a lot, I think, in the Sukkah and other places. We consider it as if that space is actually filled in. Less than 3 tvachim, it's as if you actually have some kind of a solid wall there, and you can consider that a kosher sukkah. I can keep going, Dina, till they finish off this little part. Yes.
It's up to you. Meaning, I guess you could. Meaning, I already did. Like again, I
take over.
Didn't fully prepare, but I did prepare someone on Shabbos, and I did start from here.
I can't hear you. Do you want to take over? Or should I keep going?
Yeah, I could start from here. I hope it'll be okay. Bear with me.
Okay, great. Mr. Koyach.
Okay, shkayach to you. Okay, so haytagvo ha-me'esrim ama, ubana ba'amut shehu gavoa 10 tvachim, v'yesh bo hechsher sukkah. So the case is where the sukkah is too tall, it's more than 20 amot, and what the person did in order to sort of try to fix it or whatever is he built this pillar, sort of this big thick pillar in the middle that itself is 10 tvachim, so meaning this pillar in and of itself has the height necessary to be sort of a sukkah, and yesh bo hechsher sukkah, meaning it also has, like, it's thick enough that it has, I forgot, what is it, 7 by 7 it needs to be, right? I think in order to be a kosher sukkah. But point being, it has the pillar in and of itself has like the surface to constitute a kosher sukkah. So savar Abaye lememar good asik mechitzta. So basically, Abaye thinks that what we're going to say is, again, to use, that's why we've got tons of like all these good like sukkah principles here early in the Masechet.
Dina,
Yeah.
I sent on the WhatsApp, I sent pictures from,
Oh, great. Here.
I don't know how to send it to the, but I sent it to the group.
Let me take a look.
Thank you, Becky.
Yeah, thanks. So everybody can take a look at that. I'm opening it myself. But in any case, basically, and what, oh yes, very good. Exactly. You have this like this very tall sukkah, and hold on, I'm looking for the one with the pillar in it. Hold on. Oh, there is it. Is it? Is it the one with the chair on top of it? Maybe in any case, but again, so there's this like pillar in the middle that's this thick pillar, and Abaye basically thinks to use this principle of good asik mechitzta, that picture as if, like, even though again it's just a flat pillar, sort of picture as if like all of the four walls of this pillar go straight up, right? We have that principle of this good asik mechitzta, right? Sort of like raise it up, and therefore it in and of itself will sort of constitute like a sukkah within the sukkah, and because it's 10 tefachim high, so the problem with your real sukkah is that it's too tall, but this pillar is like, it's lessening the height of the sukkah because it's sort of raising the floor. You understand? Because it's already 10 tefachim up, and now I'll just raise the walls. That will be a sukkah within the sukkah. So Abaye will say that works. Amar le Rava, but Rava says, "Ba'inan mechitzo tanikarot vileka." So Rava thinks so that we have this principle that it won't work here because of the fact that, like, literally all the walls are imaginary. Like, you can't see anything. In order to constitute a sukkah, it has to like look something like, okay, well, if the wall isn't tall enough, you have just strings, something like that. Fine, we'll allow, something. But when there's nothing, literally, it's just thin air. He says, no way. Like, you don't see any wall at all, and that's not okay. Okay, Tanu Rabbanan.
Dina,
Yeah.
Dina, I don't understand. The thing in the middle is now your sukkah, or how is the thing in the middle of sukkah? It has no empty space to be in.
What do you mean it has no empties? Meaning at the top of the sukkah. In other words, the pillar is now going to serve as the floor of the sukkah. And because it's 10 tefachim high, it's going to take care of the problem that the sukkah was too tall, because now we're starting 10 tefachim higher. And it itself, the surface area of the pillar, was, again, the necessary, dimensions of a sukkah. So the part that you're going to live in and eat it and sleep in, whatever it is the top of the pillar. The top of the pillar will now be the floor of the sukkah. And we'll just imagine that the walls, meaning that basically the pillars, rims, whatever it is, will just go up to constitute the walls. And Abaye says that will work, but Rava says no way, like you can't see walls. We understand you would sleep, whatever it is, like on top of the pillar. The top of the pillar would be the floor of the sukkah.
The whole sukkah is possible, only that top of the pillar is what works?
So exactly, meaning the rest of it is puzzle, meaning the rest of the sukkah, which is low, it's puzzle because it's too tall. It was more than 20 amo tall. The top of the pillar, which again, it's a big, thick pillar. It's, at least 7 by 7, whatever, that would now constitute exactly. The only kosher part of the sukkah would be the top of the pillar, which is now going to be like the floor of the sukkah.
The walls,
Very strange.
the walls of the sukkah are these imaginary extensions of the side of this
Yes,
pillar.
and that's why Abaye says that's fine, right? Am I saying that right? Yes, and Rava thinks, no, you can't see any wall at all, and like, that's no good. Exactly.
If you have guests that are coming into your sukkah, they
No, it's a really tiny
Yeah,
sukkah.
but
It's only the top
remember-
of this pillar. It's like
remember-
7 by 7,
Yeah,
Although I
remember,
guess it could
ladies,
be a very thick pillar.
we're talking about the bare minimum. It would be like for one person, like the Rosh Aruba.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking also. Although again, in theory, I could
Yeah,
picture
but
with an
big
even bigger
sukkah.
pillar. Like, they
make
just
a
sort of
big
said,
pillar.
Yishbo Hechsher Sukkah. It could be a really, really big pillar that's kind of this like, I don't know what to call, like not a protrusion from the ground, but like something higher. And that,
platform kind of
could be big. But
But Dina,
Yeah.
what surprises me though, is that they don't say, just like we say with the Shema, you can say it where you can't because you're worried about falling or whatever, or other things we have that concept, right? They don't say that.
yeah, you know why? I wonder, maybe because Shema requires kavana, and like sitting in the sukkah requires some type of laman yidu dorotechem, but I guess you don't need such kavana. So I guess even if you're kind of nervous the whole time of taking a step off and falling off the pillar,
Oh,
like,
I remember, I don't know if it was something that I was preparing or not. I remember someone saying that if you're in a sukkah where you're constantly on edge, like God forbid you live in an area like in a really bad area or something, and you don't think somebody could be attacking you any second or something, there's opinion that it's not kosher.
because it's like, it's
You're not
tsar.
paying
It's like,
attention
I was just gonna say that might be like the thing
Like
about like a lot of
that.
bees where
like
people talk about
rain.
Teshu Kain Tadura, you would leave if
Right.
you know. Yeah, interesting. Okay, either way, but that seems to be the pillar case, or it's a machloket. Could you use gud asik to say the walls go up, or do we just say, like, since it's not nikar at all, it's no good? Okay, and that sort of idea is going to continue. So Tanu Rabbanan, Na'at arba'a kundesin v'zikech al gaban. So now our case is where basically somebody took, again, that's why it's sort of similar, where what you're missing are kind of the walls. So again, in our first case with this pillar, you don't have walls at all. We're just going to try to use gud asik. Here, you're sort of digging 4 poles in the 4 corners, but all you have are the poles. You don't have walls other than the poles. So that's this na'at arba kundesin. You put the 4 poles in the corners. Rav Yaakov machshir v'chachamim poslin. And Rav Yaakov says that that's fine, and those 4 poles can constitute the walls, and the chachamim say it's no good. They're going to explain now. Rav Huna. Machloket al sfat hagag, de Rabbi Yaakov savar amrinan gud asik mechitzta. So he says that they're machloket about whether or not these 4 poles can constitute the wall is only in a case where somebody was building the sukkah on top of a roof, and the poles were, like, put again in the 4 corners, all on like the ridges or the edges of the roof. That's where Rav Yaakov says it's kosher, because he'll say that the walls of the house, and like I understand based on the previous thing, because then it's like recognizable. You're literally continuing up the walls of the house. So even though really, really on the sukkah, which is on the roof, you literally don't see any walls at all. It's just the poles. But like it's more logical to envision, okay, that you're sort of, especially with the poles continuing the walls of the house, that you're sort of, envisioning that the walls of the house are just continuing up along with the poles. Rabbanan Savre, lo amrin and gud asik mechitzta. And the rabbis say that, like, no, I would imagine for the same reasons what we saw before. It's literally just thin air, except for poles, and we can't, say gud asik, gud asik mechitzta when you don't see pretty much anything. But again, according to this is right, Rav Huna? Yes. But according to Rav Huna, he's saying, though, that if these 4 poles were not on the edges of the roofs, that you could maybe envision that it's the walls of the house continuing, it's just stuck into the middle of the roof, then divrei hakol psula. Then everybody, even Rav Yaakov, will agree that it's no good, because again, there's nothing to envision, continuing up, and for sure it's no good. Okay, but in contrast, Rav Nachman Amar, be'emza hagag machloket, he says, no, like, even if the poles are, smacking in the middle of the roof, there's still this machlok. Rav Yaakov will say it's fine, gud asik mechitzta, and the Rabbanan will say no. Therefore, we now have sort of this question about Rav Nachman's shita, because if you notice, he just said machloket be'emza hagag, right? But so that's why they're going to ask now. Be'emza hagag machloket about asfat hagag divrei hakol kshera. Does Rav Nachman mean that in the middle of the roof, that's where they have a machloket, but on the edges, everybody agrees, even the chachamim, that there will say gud asik, and you just mentally envision the walls of the house continuing? Or maybe Beinzu machloket. Then no, he was just sort of like pointing out, in contrast to Rav Huna, because again, Rav Huna thought that that the machloket is in the, wait, now I got confused. Wait, Rav Huna says that the machloket is the ridges, but be'emtza, everybody says no good, and therefore Rav Nachman is just coming and trying to say, no, I disagree. Even be'emtza, there is a machloket, and it's also a machloket on the edges, but he only mentioned the middle only because that's where he's trying to point out, no, I disagree, like there's a machloket there too. Or does he think there's a machloket be'emtza, but not even a machloket on the edges, what I'm saying, because there everybody agrees it's even fine. Like, it's not clear, is he disagreeing only about the be'emtza or also about the ridges? And it just says teku. We're actually not sure what Rav Nachman's shita is about if the poles are on the outside. Does he think there's also a machloket if the poles are on the ridges, or does he think that then everybody agrees actually that it's fine? We don't know. Okay, but now they're gonna challenge Rav Huna. Again, Rav Huna, just to keep straight, Rav Huna is the one who thinks that when the poles are on the edges, we have a machloket. In the middle, everybody says no good. Okay, so Meitvei, Na'atar ba'akun desin ba'aretz v'zikech al gaban. So it's almost the identical case, except this time, instead of the poles being dug into a roof, they're just on, whatever, flat ground, just being, dug into the ground, and somebody puts schach on the top. Again, point being the poles are constituting the walls. Rabbi Yaakov machshir v'chachamim poslin. So again, similarly, we're seeing that Rabbi Yaakov says that's fine. The chachamim say it's no good. But the reason why this is a problem for Rav Huna is v'ha eretz dike'emsa hagag dami v'kamachshir Rabbi Yaakov. If you remember, Rav Huna had explained the previous machlok where the poles were on the roof as if it's be'emtza, everybody agrees no good. The only chance that Rav Yaakov says it's good is if it's on the ridges, because then you could sort of envision the walls of the house continuing up. But here's the identical case, except it's not on a roof. It's just down in the middle of the ground, which is clearly more comparable to the case of poles in the middle of the roof because there's no walls that are easy to like envision going up. And yet even here where it's in the middle of the ground, which is comparable to the middle of the roof case, and yet Rav Yaakov still says it's okay, even though it's not like in edges of the roof case. And they in fact say tiyufta Rav Huna tiyufta. Yeah, you're right. Like clearly Rav Huna is wrong when Rav Huna said the machloket is only if the poles are on the edges of the roof so that you couldn't envision the walls of the house continuing, but then in the middle, everybody agrees no good. No, he's wrong. Like again, Rav Nachman had come and said, no, the machloket is even the middle. And clearly we see he's right. There is a machloket even when they're in the middle. Okay, then it continues still in challenging Rav Huna. Ve'od be'emtza hu deplige, aval al sfat hagag divrei kol kshera. Meaning the fact that, again, in this new case that we have where the poles are just in the middle of ground somewhere, not on a roof at all, and the and we still have a machlok between Rav Yaakov and the Chachamim, is it okay or not? That implies, they're saying, that in the middle of the roof type of a case where there's no walls to show the ridge and continuing up, that's where we have a machlok. Okay? But if it were on the ridges of the roof, the implication that they're drawing from this is that everybody would agree that it's kosher, which would be a refutation even of Rav Huna's first point. If you remember, Rav Huna had two parts. One is where he thinks the machloket is when the poles are on the edges of the roof, and there it's a machloket. The other was when it's be'emtza, then everybody says no good. Now we're seeing a case which is comparable to the middle, it's a machloket, which implies that if it's on the ridges, everybody would agree is good. So we did in fact reject his position about that the middle of the roof, everybody says is no good. We say no tiyufta. Clearly there's a machloket even about this case. We're now trying to say there's even a tiyufta about when it's on the edges. That's where he thinks it's a machloket. And we're trying to say, sorry, that's where he thinks it's a machloket. We're trying to say everybody agrees it's fine. But here we're not going to accept the refutation of Rav Huna. And it says, Amar lacha Rav Huna, plige be'emtza hagag, v'hu hadin al sfat hagag. No. Here Rav Huna could at least defend himself. Again, the other thing about the be'emtza hagag, where he thinks nobody says okay, we refuted him. But here we're going to defend him and say, no, he could still maintain that the edges case is still a machloket. It's not that everybody agrees it's fine. So why? Because he could just say that, again, they're having machloket about the be'emtza hagag type of situation, and that same machloket applies also on the edges. And the fact that they're presenting the machloket as like a middle of the gag case, which implies that if it was on the ridges, everybody agree with it's fine. He'll say, no. The reason they talked about the middle of the roof type of case is lo diacha kocho de Rabbi Yaakov, that like it's a bigger chiddush that Rabbi Yaakov will be machshir even in the middle of the roof case where you can't easily envision the walls of the house just continuing up. Even there, he's still machshir, and that's why they presented the case like that. Lo diacha, his koch, that he's even machshir in the middle of the roof case. Kol v'chomer, he's machshir on the edges, and the Chachamim say it's no good in both cases, and so the machloket applies to both cases. And that's Rabbi Yaakov dafilu be'emtza hagag nami machshir. That again, he's machshir even in the middle of the gag type of case. Okay, I hope we're all good about that. Yeah, I hope. Okay, continues the Gemara then and says, Tanu Rabbanan. So new Braita, Na'at arba'a kundesin ba'aretz v'sikech al gaban. Again, similar type of case, right? He's sticking the four poles, right? To sort of constitute the walls and sort of put schach on top of them. Rabbi Yaakov Omer ro'in kol she'ilu yechakeku. I hope you have a picture of this because here there is actually a picture in our scroll. Without it, I wouldn't have understood. So again, so Rabbi Yaakov says, right, Ro'in kol she'ilu yechakeku v'yechaloku v'yesh ben tevach lekan v'tevach lekan nidonin mishum diomad. So basically, again, it's a thick pole. Let me see if you have a picture. If not, I'll send what our scroll has, because you do need a picture, I think, to understand this.
28.
28. Yeah, does that? Oh, whoops! I just lost it. Here it is.
28.
Oh, yes. Okay, look at picture 28. That does make it easier. Okay, so again, picture exactly like picture 28 if everybody's looking. Thank you for sending the pictures. Is that so you sort of have this like round, thick beam. And what he's talking about, you can even see in the words, right? So again, you have these poles, right, that were stuck into the ground. And he's saying that if you could basically, like sort of cut it into like this like square shape, almost like again, the way that ArtScroll even has it is it's like here, I'll send the picture also, but both are good. You'll see that they're very similar. Hold on. Let me, here. There we go. Okay, you'll see this also, where it's like a circle beam, right, in the picture I just sent, and you sort of draw a square into it, or this sounds familiar from like all of our, right, air type things. You draw the square into it, and then you sort of cut so that you have like one wall going this way and one wall going that way. Again, hopefully you can now see it in both picture 28 that Becky had sent, and also in that picture I just sent. And basically what he's saying is, if when you sort of draw that imaginary like square into the circle of the beam and cut it so that you have one wall going this way, one wall going that way, if each of those two walls are each a tefach, then that will be fine. What's it called? And basically what he's saying is, is that we'll basically treat it like a double post, but meaning we'll basically consider it, a wall on each side. But if they're not each of them a tefach, so then we're not going to consider it this double post. They're not going to be like, the wall on each side. Because Rabbi Yaakov basically says that you need them to each be a tefach, and if it's a tefach, then yes, you can count it as the wall. But the rabbis disagree that this is ever at all possible, even if they're a tefach. They say no way, you need two full walls, and the third wall has to be at least a tefach, but the two other walls have to be a full wall. You can't just use this like mad thing of the poles. Okay, and that basically was that piece. That was all talking about, what if it's too tall? What if it's above 20 amot? Now they're going to talk about the next ruling. If you remember, the Mishnah talked about what if it's too short, right? It has the minimum of 10 tefachim.
Can I ask one other question?
Yeah, sure.
That weird case with the pillar in the middle of the sukkah, that would only work according to Rabbi Yaakov, because he has imaginary walls in the middle of the.
Oh, yeah, that's actually a really good point. I hadn't thought about that. But and what's weird is that over there we also had a machloket, but the people in that machloket were Rava and Abaye. Like you would think that it should be the same idea of, can you sort of just like imagine the walls of like the pillar? That's interesting. I wonder if maybe when it's walls of a house, that's when Rabbi Yaakov is willing to say no, because even when it was in the middle, in the end, we say that
in the middle. So it's
in the middle. There's no place. There's no place for anything there. It doesn't have size if it's in the middle.
No, but the pillar was in the middle. And so in theory, the whole machloket was, can you sort of envision the walls of the pillar going straight up? And you're right. Now that is weird. That why was that a machloket Rav and Abaye, whether you can envision the walls of the pillar to go up, and here it's like about this Rav Yaakov versus the Chachamim, whether or not the walls can go straight up. It's a good point. I'm not sure.
I think now that I'm saying it, Rav Yaakov, the pillar is a solid wall, as opposed to the poles, which are not walls. Does that make sense?
Wait, which I'm saying in the platform case thing, whatever we built that pillar, there was
the
no wall
walls
at all. Maybe that's why. Is that what you're trying to say? There was literally no wall at all. It's thin air, and you just have to like envision, sort of the walls from the bottom of the pillar just like going up. And here you do have those pillars. Yes, is that what you're saying? You have the poles.
No, I'm saying the opposite.
That's what I thought you were saying, the opposite. But I would think that here at least you have poles. You have at least something.
No, but there you have the four walls of the pillar, which are walls. They're tiny, but they're walls.
I hear, except they're flat on the part of the sukkah. You're considering the top of the pillar to be the floor of the sukkah. So in terms of the walls of the sukkah, you have literally thin air. Whereas at least here you have poles. I actually think you've got more. At least you've got poles here.
I don't know.
Picture 25. Picture 25.
See?
Sorry, what'd you say?
See the picture
Picture
25.
25 shows
Yeah.
that talking about the
25?
walls of the beam are, gadasik.
Yeah, but point being on the top, like meaning where the chair is, there's literally, it's just thin air as opposed to having poles. That's why I think the case with the poles is there's at least more to work with, so to speak, I think.
But isn't it talking about two different issues? One is good asik, chitza, and the other is the concept of nidonim mishum diyumad. Like, isn't it talking about
so there's three different cases. The truth is we're now mixing up cases 2 and 3, I think, meaning
right.
There were 3 cases. Case number 1 was the pillar in, sort of that thick pillar. So you're sort of making the floor of the pillar be the top of the pillar be the floor of your sukkah. Then we have the case with the poles where we talked about them being in the middle of the roof, the edge of the roof, or even just on the ground, which is kind of comparable to the middle of the roof. And now we have the diumad where I'm assuming that in the case of the pillars that you're just sticking in, we're assuming it was narrow and that there definitely wouldn't be the tefach on tefach. Then the third case is talking about the diumad where the pillars themselves have a great deal of thickness that maybe then you could have like the tefach by tefach, and that's where Rav Yaakov is saying that if you've got the tefach by tefach, then that alone can constitute the wall itself, and the Chachamim say not. But in the second case where we just had the poles and they didn't talk about the Dumad thing, I'm assuming that's where it was thin and we're just working with good asik. You're right. In cases
Right.
2 and 3, it sounds exactly the same, but it's actually completely different principles. Case number 2, I'm assuming it's narrow poles and we're just working with good asik. Case number 3 is where the poles themselves are thick enough that there's actually a question about could the pillars themselves, because they're thick enough, count as the walls.
But I thought in the case of the pillar in the center, you're really extending the floor, not the walls. You're extending the floor to the other side, opposite sides of the
I
sukkah.
don't think so. I don't think in any
No,
of these
no,
cases.
no.
Because it
No,
says,
you
in here, it's only if it's a certain distance from the walls of the sukkah.
That was in the earlier case. That was in the stuff that Yehudit
yeah,
taught.
that's not the pillar case. That's the pit case.
Now it's a pillar case too.
I don't think
No,
so.
the
I don't
pillars
think pillar had
is
anything to do with distance
unit.
from walls. I didn't mention that.
Talking about the walls going up and whether the platform on top of the pillar can be considered a kosher sukkah.
Right.
We're not using lavud.
Yeah, in terms of distance from walls, that was on Amud Aleph only.
Right. If the sukkah is more than 20 cubits high and one built a platform in the center of the sukkah, if there's from the edge of the platform to the wall in each and every direction a distance of 4 cubits, it's unfit. Less than 4 cubits, it is fit. So it
Yeah,
seems
but that was earlier. Wasn't that the Amud Aleph case?
that, yeah,
Yes.
but it's still talking about a pillar in the center of the sukkah.
Yes.
There we don't.
Oh, go
You
ahead.
don't need any of that stuff because the platform itself has the area needed,
Right.
and it's considered connected to the
To the
walls of the sukkah.
Right.
We don't have that here.
Mhm.
We have this independent pillar. It's not connected to the sides of the sukkah at all.
Oh, okay.
It's constituting its totally own new sukkah, so to speak. Yeah. Okay, anyway, the last piece, starting sort of like a new, again, related, but I'm saying till now we've been talking about a sukkah that's too tall. Now we're talking about too short. So v'sheina gavoa asarat tefachim, right? If it's not, it has to be at least 10 tefachim high. So Minalan, right? We always want to know, right? That was the part that Rav Yitz taught on, right? The very opening daf was, how do we know that if it's 20 or more amud, it's puzzles. Now we want to know, how do you know if it's not at least 10 tefachim, it's puzzle. So Itmar, Rav, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yochanan, Rabbi Chaviva Matnu. So all this group of 4 rabbis, right? Rav, Rabbi Chanina, Rabbi Yochanan, Rav Chaviva, these 4 rabbis taught. But sort of parenthetically, they add Bekula Seder Moed, Kol Ki Hai Zuga, Chalufi Rabbi Yochanan, Uma'ile Rabbi Yonatan. Again, sort of parenthetically, they're saying wherever in Seder Moed that you have this group of 4 rabbis, really, it's not really Rabbi Yochanan, it's really Rabbi Yonatan. So like, change whatever that. Okay, fine. That was like parenthetical. Okay, now what do all these rabbis teach? So they teach the following: Aron Tish'a v'kaporet tefach. That the aron was 9 tefachim, and the kaporet, right, covering it on top of it, was an extra tefach. Harei kan asara. That's how you get that the aron was 10 tefachim altogether. And we know that God sort of, spoke to us from on top of this 10 tefachim aron. Vitanya, Rabbi Yossi Omer, me'olam lo yarda shechina lemata, velo alu Moshe ve'Eliyahu lemarom, shne'emar hashmayim shmayim lashem ba'arsa natan livnei adam. That basically, like, God will not descend to within 10 tefachim of the ground, because again, hashmayim shmayim lashem ba'arsa natan livnei adam. The heaven is like God's domain, the earth is man's domain. He gave that to us. Therefore, he kivyachol will not come to within 10 tefachim of the ground, because he gave that to us as our domain, and that is why the aron has to be at least 10 tefachim high, so that God can come and meet with us and descend and talk to us from on top of the aron. Again, he sort of gave 10 tefachim and below to us. He will not like trespass on our space. That's why the aron had to be that high, so that God could come down and talk to us and meet with us there without trespassing in our space. I'll just add as one short thing of what I think is so cool about this idea is that it indicates that in order for a sukkah to be a kosher sukkah, it has to be a height such that the Shekhinah can come into it. And that part of what we're doing in the sukkah is meeting with God. And that's why, in order to be a kosher sukkah, it has to be a height that, enables kiviyachol, God to come within it, which is cool. It's cool that we're learning the minimum height of a sukkah from the aron, and that both are learned from needing to be a height such that God can come and meet with us there. Anyway, what's going to happen next, that I sort of left it for whoever teaches tomorrow, is they're then going to challenge this idea. Again, what we just said is God will not come within 10 tefachim of the ground, and that even Moshe and Eliyahu didn't go up to heaven, because again, ground is ours, heaven is God's. They're going to now challenge both of those. They're going to challenge, is that really true that God didn't come within 10 tefachim of the ground? And wait, is that really true that Moshe and Eliyahu didn't go up to heavens? Of course they did. So whatever, but that will be in tomorrow's.
Yasher koyach.
Yes, Kayach, thank you, Yehudit and Dina. Thank you so much.
Your pleasure.
Thank you very much, everyone.
Chodesh Tov.
Chodesh
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 Tov.
tov. Amen.
Tov.